Two men are sitting in prison as we speak for a murder that they probably, you know what, I'm just going to say it, that they did not commit, in my opinion. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Yvonne Layne. Viewer discretion is advised. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of background information on all of the players involved in this case. Yvonne Layne was born on October 9th, 1972, and she lived in Alliance, Ohio. Oh yeah, we're going to Ohio. It's basically the murder capital of the world. Now, Yvonne was a mother of 5 wonderful children. She was described as a wonderful, perfect, adoring, loving mother. She would do anything for her kids. Her kids were her entire world. Her mother, Tanya, was very involved in helping Yvonne, with the kids whenever she needed it. And this would include, Tanya would take the kids to school from time to time, pick them up, little things like that, just to kind of help Yvonne out. On the morning of April 1st, 1999, Tanya went to Yvonne's home, and this was to pick up one of her grandkids, who was the 6-year-old, and she was supposed to take him to school that morning. The front door was unlocked, so she walked inside the house. Everything, at first glance seemed normal until she got to the living room. To her absolute horror, she found the body of her own daughter lying face down in a pool of blood. She then immediately went to go check on the kids. All the kids that were there were unharmed, and they seemed to have no idea that this even happened. This was still pretty early in the morning. Some of them were likely still asleep. She just ran across the street to go call 911 from a neighbor's house, and police arrived within a few minutes. When police got there, they, of course, found the body of Yvonne. She was lying face down, and something very odd. She had this small, portable TV placed on her back. And it's one of those TVs, that had the big back to it. This is 1999 after all. This is really kind of before the infancy of, flat screen TVs and whatnot. Even for a small TV, it was still, pretty heavy. When her body was examined later, there were no bruises on her back, no broken bones. So what they came up with was that this TV was probably just placed on her after she was killed to make it look like there was some kind of major struggle taking place. The TV really had nothing to do with the actual crime. Where she was found did not appear to be where she was killed. When they went up the staircase, there was blood all over the stairs, all over the walls of the staircase. And then there was a sliding glass door that they found that went to a balcony that had the kind of the cutout of almost like a person's body, but in blood. So it appeared that her throat had been cut there by the sliding glass door. And then she was taken downstairs to the living room and just dropped on the ground. For what purpose? It's not really known. But Yvonne did have one slash across her throat, which would end up being her actual, obviously, cause of death. Police noticed that the couch where she was found had a big sheet covering it, and there was a transfer of blood on the sheet. So likely the killer, as they walked by, got blood on the sheet. They also found a pillow in the area where it appeared that the knife had been wiped off. They found 2 bloody shoe prints that were partial shoe prints, and one of them was actually on her back. So there on her shirt, there was a partial shoe print. They found no fingerprints, allegedly. They found no hair follicles that were foreign, allegedly. They found No other DNA other than Yvonne's. So they apparently had almost no physical evidence at this crime scene. They were able to determine that the shoe print was likely by a Nike sneaker, and that's about it. The kids did not witness anything, I guess thankfully, also not thankfully, but you wouldn't want them to witness anything like that. But yeah, it was just like a Nike shoe, the kids saw nothing, and then you had Yvonne's body. And that's basically really all they had. That being said, the crime scene itself really wasn't secured properly. This is going to be a story where police are very heavily involved, but not in the ways you would want. They allowed family members and even like a neighbor or something like that, as well as all the other officers, to kind of just roam freely in this house. No one was wearing shoe protection, those little covers over their shoes. No one was wearing gloves, which is like, what? That's kind of like investigating a crime scene 101, and I'm not even a freaking cop. In order to get the kids out of the house, they took a sheet just from her home, and they covered her body with it. They covered her just bloody body with this sheet from her own house. They then took the kids one by one and literally walked over her body, covered with the sheet, with the kids to get them out of the house. And then when they were done with that, they removed the sheet and put it back where they found it. What the holiest shit? The stairway did not appear to be processed for anything. And this is a stairway that had a crap ton of blood in it. They didn't process it for fingerprints. They didn't process it for all of the DNA that might have been in there. They just like, nah. The coroner, I don't know if this person was just a hot mess at the time or they just didn't really give a crap, but the coroner said that she was probably killed after 7 p.m. the night before. Like, probably. They didn't even take her body temperature at the time she was found, and that's a big thing to determine a person's cause of death. You know, how cool their body is as opposed to how the body is supposed to be temperature-wise. They just didn't take the temperature. So the time of death was just sort of like a guess. Like, yeah, maybe after 7, I don't know. Usually, a good coroner could tell if a person's throat was cut from left to right or right to left, but this person didn't know. They're like, I don't know. Again, that's a key factor because a lot of the times, you know, someone who's doing something like this is going to use their dominant hand, and whether a person is right-handed or left-handed could come up and could be very relevant to finding the correct suspect. But the coroner was like, I don't know. They just cut their throat. Yvonne had bruises on her thigh and on her head, and these were relatively fresh bruises. The coroner noted that they were there, but offered no explanation as to how they got there. They gave no possibilities of how they could have gotten there. They just said they were there, and that's about it. Again, could be relevant because, you know, she might have fought off her attacker, maybe. Who knows? Maybe they got into a scuffle beforehand. All of these things are relevant when you're interrogating people, and if they slip up and say, like, oh yeah, I punched her in the head, like, oh, okay, there's a bruise on her head. We hadn't told anyone that. So this is helpful. You know, the coroner, and I don't understand this, could not remember if they gave her a sexual assault test. He couldn't remember if he did one. I didn't note it down or anything. Just, I don't know. Family and friends came forward with their own suspects. They said, you guys should really look into these people as to who may have done this. And here's the kicker. One of those people was a cop. One of those people was a police officer that had been, I guess, harassing and pestering Yvonne, apparently in the weeks or the months prior to this event. That officer's name, I don't know. But I do know that family knew of this person and told police. Police did not investigate this person at all. As a matter of fact, police did not investigate any of the people that the family and friends, co-workers, etc. said, you should look into these people. They honed in on one person and one person alone. One of her ex-boyfriends, David Thorne. David and Yvonne had dated towards the end of 1995 going into 1996. And Yvonne got pregnant towards the end of this. Now, at the time of her pregnancy, she did not tell David for whatever of her own reasons. I can't say. David did not even find out he had a child until 1998, and this is when child support services had contacted him with regards to paying child support. So what he did to make sure everything was done properly and legally was they did a DNA test. They confirmed that David was the father of this particular child. David right away started paying child support. As a matter of fact, he started paying child support before the DNA test was actually completed. After the fact, Yvonne and David worked out a very amicable visitation schedule. David became pretty involved in his son's life. In the 1 year that he had an opportunity to really be the father of this child, he took him fishing. He hung out with him all the time. He seemed to absolutely love his son. David was described by friends and family as just a good dude, a really kind, loving person, not someone who would try to just push away this whole situation with the kid. He wanted to be involved. Police would learn that in the months kind of leading up to this murder, David was falling a little behind on his child support payments. They basically said he didn't want to pay child support anymore. He didn't want to do it. So the night after Yvonne's body was found, police announced to David's own family that David was their number one suspect, that he was the one to do this. Their theory was, David didn't want to pay child support and he wanted custody of the boy, so he must have killed Yvonne. I have a couple of questions about that. The biggest question I have is, if he didn't want to pay child support but also wanted his son full time, he would then be more financially responsible for the young boy, not less. That doesn't make any sense. Police ran into a major issue though. David, for the entire time frame the murder could have taken place, he had a rock-solid, airtight, unquestionable alibi. He was confirmed to be at work. They had records he was at work. There was witnesses to say he was at work. There was nothing they could do. David could not have physically killed Yvonne at all. Police, who probably should have started to move on from David and tried to maybe look into the suspects that family was telling them about, they're like, no, David was responsible for this. We know it. So they started to question all of David's friends until they got an answer they were looking for. I guess. This is when one of David's friend, Joseph Wilkes, who went by Joe, came into the picture. David and Joseph were decent friends. A lot of the people that would later be interviewed about Joe said that Joe was this kind of guy who was a little slow. People felt bad for him. They befriended him because they felt, kind of bad for him. He was considered an outcast type personality. He had some, mental issues, meaning, like I said, he was just a little slower. He had a lower IQ. And if you know anything about true crime, when you can't find a suspect, well, just try to point the finger at someone who doesn't understand what they're into. So police began to question Joe, and you know what? Not really question. They began to tell Joe that we know you were involved in this. They didn't know that. They had no clue about any of it. They were just saying that to get something out of him. They were telling Joe that David is in the very next interrogation room right now as we speak, telling them that you did this, Joe. You killed Yvonne because he paid you to do it. And by the way, David wasn't even at the police station during any of this. They repeatedly told Joe, if you want to be a real man, you would tell us what happened, because right now, you're not being a real man. If you don't confess and tell us everything, you're going to get the death penalty, Joe. They're going to put you to death for this. Leading up to all of this, Joe was like, I didn't do anything. I wasn't involved. No, I didn't do this. But after hours and hours and hours of berating him and calling him less than a man and saying, we're going to put you to death, Joe felt scared. He was like, if I don't, they're going to kill me if I don't confess. So he did. He would say that David paid him $300 to kill Yvonne. Police then prepared a confession, a statement, if you will, for Joe to read on camera, which was his confession. The words weren't written by Joe. The words weren't said by Joe. The police told him, this is what you're going to say. Joe would be arrested, as well as David. Joe was told, if you testify against David, we will give you a lesser sentence and we won't execute you. Joe, being a little, slower, said, okay, I don't want to die here. The problem at Joe's trial and then later at David's trial, Joe couldn't recall any of his confession. He said the words, I don't know, over 100 times at both trials. When he was asked on the stand to recall the crime, he got literally every detail wrong. The only thing he got correct was the fact that a knife was used to cut her throat, which anyone could have surmised that. When they asked him, where did you kill her? He stated he killed her in the living room. This wasn't true. She was killed upstairs by the sliding glass door. There was nothing in his testimonies that indicated that he was responsible for this. Joe said that the murder was done with a pocket knife that he had bought from a local store the night the murder would end up taking place. The prosecution found 2 witnesses who said that Joe came to them and told them his big plans, about this whole murder for hire plot. He told these 2 people that, yep, I bought this knife and I want to go use it to kill, this woman for my friend. The issue with this is Joe had no idea who these 2 people were. When he saw them at the trial, he didn't know, he'd have never met them before. He had no clue. What about the $300? Can they confirm that Joe received $300? Actually, yes. But Joe had been given $300 from David 4 months prior to the murder. The reason? Joe's car was broken and it had about $300 worth of repairs that was needed, and he needed his car to get to and from work and whatnot. So David gave him $300, just being a good friend. And Joe eventually, not too soon afterwards, paid the $300 back to David. So this $300 was not involved in this murder for hire plot. Despite of all of this, I don't even want to call it reasonable doubt. This is just plain and simple. I don't think he did it. This guy didn't do this. The jury, however, was convinced that a man wouldn't confess to a murder and a murder for hire plot if he didn't do it. No reasonable person would do that. I hate to break it to that jury and to those of you out there who don't understand, but many people have done this exact thing, have confessed to a crime they had no involvement in. This has been proven time and time again through police coercion, through the laziness of police not wanting to investigate this murder because it's just too complicated. We have the right person for this. Let's just pin it on them. It's easier. There's been many cases where there's been physical evidence to contradict their suspect, meaning like that this person could not have been involved, yet they get convicted anyway, yet they confess anyway. And that's what happened here. Joe, unfortunately, was convicted. And because he was going to be testifying against David, they did give him, a lighter sentence. He was sentenced to life in prison, and he was given a possibility of parole after 30 years. Then he goes on to testify at David's trial. He was their star witness, of course. Again, when questioned, he said the words, "I don't know, I don't remember, I can't recall," 138 times during his testimony at David's trial. 138 times. And again, he got all of the crime scene information wrong for the second time. There was not a single trace of any physical evidence connecting David to having any involvement in this murder. Obviously he didn't physically commit it because he was confirmed to be at work, but they couldn't find anything to physically connect him to paying Joe for this murder, or being involved at all. But again, the confession was pretty damning. So David was then convicted of life in prison without the possibility of parole. In July of 2001, Joseph Wilkes from prison signs an affidavit, and he recants his entire confession. In this affidavit, he says that police told him what to say. He said in the statement that police instructed him to say the things he did or he would be executed. He stated in the statement that nothing he said at the trial was true. He made it all up, or he guessed, or he said what police wanted him to say. David, who's also in prison, he has tried to appeal his conviction based on the recanting of Joe's confession, but he has been denied his appeal every single time. David also tried to appeal because of the lawyer he had. Now, his family scraped together $100,000 to pay for his defense attorney, but this guy was kind of a shit. During the trial, David's attorney smelled heavily of alcohol. He did not object to many questions or many statements. He really didn't seem to interject at most things. He didn't call any expert witnesses. He didn't call really any significant witnesses that would have contradicted, everything police were saying happened. A month after David's trial, his attorney was charged with a DUI. And then in 2009, this lawyer actually died of alcohol poisoning. So it only goes to show that during this trial, the man was a drunk. And he was probably physically drunk at the trial. And this alone should warrant an appeal because he did not get the best defense, David. Here we are. David has been in prison now for roughly 20 years. Same thing with Joe. Joe is eligible for parole, I believe they said in 2029, which this is bearing some similarities to, Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, in my opinion. Stephen Avery, they wanted him to be the killer, but they needed someone to provide the context of the case. They needed someone to provide the narrative in order to convict Stephen Avery. In this case, they wanted David Thorne to be the killer. It had to be him, or we just want it to be him because we don't want to do the work. But we need to find someone to give us the narrative. Bada bing, bada boom. Here comes Joseph Wilkes. Done. It is so similar, in my opinion. And it just goes to show that this type of thing happens all the time. For various reasons. Police are either too lazy. Police are corrupt. You know, the prosecution just wants a win. They don't care about if the person's innocent or guilty. They just need the win because elections, yay, we want to be reelected because we did our job well. But ultimately, there are just so many people sitting in a prison cell right now, and I firmly believe from this case that David Thorne and even Joe Wilkes are both innocent, in my opinion. Or at the very least, there is a massive amount of reasonable doubt, and you are supposed to convict a person beyond a reasonable doubt, but there's too much reasonable doubt for this case. Why wasn't this unnamed police officer who was harassing Yvonne, why wasn't he investigated? And that goes to show, like, well, we can't have that, so we need to find someone else who could have done this. Well, you know, could have done this. And that's really shady to me. Why not investigate other people? Cross people off your list, right? But this is all just my opinion. This is not, I'm not stating anything that I'm firmly saying is fact. I'm giving you an opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think that these two men are innocent? Do you think there was enough legitimate evidence to convict them? Do you think they should be in prison right now? Let me know what you guys think. So that is it for today's story. I will, of course, be back for another case here in a couple of days. In the meantime, if you have a case you want me to recommend, please, you can email me at mikey@truecrimerer.com. I will put the email address below, of course. Also, please check my case list first. My case list is in my link tree, which is linked below. Pretty please scroll through that list first. I'm getting a ton of emails lately with names that are definitely on my list already. And people who are saying, I looked through your list, but I didn't see this name. But it was on there. So please, it's just like get inundated with emails. And I'm trying to weed out the duplicates, but it's very difficult. Just please take some time to look through the list before you recommend a name. But if you can't find it legitimately, email me and I will add it to my case list. If you want to support me in any way, we do sell merch. We sell a shirt like this, the Crimerer crew member. Oh my God, I'm covered in dog hair. We sell other shirts with other sayings. We sell hoodies. You can get like rainbow font too to support the LGBT community, which I'm a part of. You can also get mugs and wine glasses and whatnot. So yeah, that's a good way to support me. And lastly, if you aren't aware, I am also on TikTok. I have about 2.6 million followers over there. I have over 2,000 videos with a whole bunch of cases. So if you want to see a lot more, check that out. I'll have it linked somewhere in the video for you to go easily click to. So, all right, that is it for today, folks. I will see you for the next video, for the next case. And until then, ta-ta for now. True crime. Rooney, ding dong, Roonies. Yep, I am never going to get that correct. Okay.